July 5, 1943. After much haste, the Germans get 200 Panther-type tanks to participate in the Great Battle of Kursk, which ended the Second World War on the Eastern Front. Although we are talking about one of the best tanks of the war, at the time of Operation Citadel they were not yet ready, and the vast majority were killed due to mechanical breakdowns. These problems would be corrected little by little, until by the beginning and middle of 1944, the German Panther was fully operational, and ready to wreak real havoc on the battlefield. The story that we are going to see below is one of those many individual actions, in which one or two solitary German tanks shot down a huge number of enemy armored vehicles. Although performances such as that of Michael Wittmann in Villers-Bocage, or Otto Carius in Mali Nava are better known, today we are going to the Normandy region at the end of July 1944, to analyze the spectacular Ernst Barkmann action. There, the German Panzer ace, to whom a total of 82 enemy armored vehicles killed, added 9 more to his personal account. Before we get into this battle, let's briefly look at the main features of the Panther and Sherman. The Panther is armed with a high-velocity 75mm gun, capable of penetrating 112mm of sloped armor at 1 km and 90 cm at 2 km. Regarding its armor, it has 80mm of inclined frontal armor, and 40mm on its sides. On the other hand, its engine was much more powerful than that of the Sherman, and made it easily overcome many obstacles in which its American enemy got stuck. For its part, the Sherman also has a 75mm cannon, although it has a much slower muzzle velocity than the Panther, making its penetration capacity less. Thus, and depending on the model of the Sherman, at 1 km it can only penetrate between 65 and 75mm of armor, and about 50mm at 2 km away. This, as we see, makes the German tank much superior if it is fighting on a battlefield in open terrain and with high visibility. Although this happened frequently on the Eastern Front, the same did not happen in France and Germany, causing the combats to be fought at a shorter distance, in which tanks such as the Panther or the Tiger lost all their advantage. Finally, and with respect to its armor, the different variants of the Sherman had between 50 and 63mm of armor inclined at an angle of 56 degrees, which, although it gave it good protection, was easily penetrated by the Panther's cannon at more than a kilometer. So, to summarize, while the German main battle tank could shoot down the Sherman frontally at a distance of more than 1,300 meters, the American armor could only do so at less than 750. Given the characteristics of each armored vehicle, let's begin with the analysis of one of the most unique individual Panzer actions on the Western Front. The context in which the action takes place is during the American offensive in Normandy, known as Operation Cobra, which managed to break the German defensive lines at the end of July 1944. This attack was the last in a series of offensives that had been launching since D-Day, both in the British sector at Caen, and in the American sector at St. Lo. Beginning on July 25, just days after the failed British Operation Goodwood in eastern Caen, it quickly pulverized the German defenses with overwhelming bombardments, obliterating everything in its path. In this attack, up to 8 infantry divisions and 4 armored divisions of the U.S. Army participated, which fell on the depleted German divisions that had been fighting in the area since practically the beginning of the landing. These units include the remains of 2 elite Panzer divisions such as Das Reich and Panzer Lehr, which despite not being even a shadow of what they had been a month and a half earlier, they were going to sell their skin dearly. It was precisely in the Waffen-SS Das Reich division, in which Sergeant Barkmann was at the controls of a Panther tank, in the vicinity of Lolori. Barkmann was a veteran who had been fighting since the start of the war in Poland, then also in France in 1940, and soon after in Russia. There he finished training on the Eastern Front, participating in both the Barbarossa operation and Manstein's counteroffensive in Kharkov, and the subsequent Battle of Kursk. Although during the first months of 1943 he was a gunner of a Panzer III, and later as a commander, he was soon given a Panther as soon as these armored vehicles began to arrive at the front. After participating in heavy fighting from the Battle of Kursk to the subsequent defense of the Dnieper River, Das Reich was transferred to the south of France in February 1944 to recuperate. A few days after the start of the Normandy landings, Das Reich received the order to go to this sector, and began its long march for Montauban. Due to numerous difficulties that we have already analyzed in a program on this division, the Das Reich did not arrive in Normandy until the beginning of July, after which it gradually took up defensive positions. During the first weeks of July, Barkmann was involved in very intense fighting, in which he began to wreak havoc on American armored units. In total, it is estimated that he shot down about 6 Shermans between July 7th and the day before the start of Operation Cobra. It was just a few days before the American attack, when Barkmann's Panther broke down and had to be sent to a repair shop in the German rear, near the town of Lullory. So when the Americans began their big offensive on July 25th, the Das Reich division was near Perriers, about 15 kilometers northwest of where Barkmann was stationed with his Panther. His first reaction as soon as his tank was operational was to head towards the position, but it didn't take long for him to meet some German soldiers who were withdrawing and who informed him that the Americans had broken the front. In addition, they indicated that numerous Shermans were about to reach his position. The confusing information that he had indicated that some 15 Sherman tanks were about to arrive, and in such a situation, Barkmann decided to set up an ambush to try to stop the entire American armored column alone. The German sergeant and his crew were a mile south of Lullory, at a crossroads about 10 miles east of St. Lo, which was one of the main axes of advance of the American offensive. The decision that Barkmann made was to camouflage himself in the place, using some houses and the dense vegetation, in a position in which he had a clear view of the main entrance through which the Americans were approaching. As soon as he saw the enemy armored vehicles appear, Barkmann shot and killed the first 2 Shermans who led the column, and a tanker truck carrying gasoline, which created a powerful explosion. The American reaction was to surround these 2 downed Shermans and reach the position of the German Panzer that was firing at them, but Barkmann continued firing and shot down 2 more Shermans who attempted this maneuver. With 4 Shermans down, the remaining U.S. armor decided to stop advancing, and fell back to better study the situation. The decision they made was to request air support, and Barkmann's Panther was quickly attacked by Allied aircraft, which caused some damage, but did not prevent the tank from continuing to fire. While the fighter bombers attacked the German Panzer, the American armored vehicles took advantage of the confusion to advance on it, in an attempt to surprise it. However, Barkmann, who was a veteran with many years of combat behind him, was vigilant at all times and shot down 2 new Shermans as soon as they came within range. Being completely surrounded and with no hope of continuing to resist in that isolated position, Barkmann decided to withdraw to the south, shooting down another Sherman who during this maneuver got in his way. After this, Barkmann was able to return with his damaged Panther to the German lines, where he recounted his great feat with which he was awarded the Knight's Cross. From then on, the German sergeant found himself involved in increasingly desperate fighting, until finally the entire German front collapsed, and he narrowly escaped from the Falaise pocket. This confrontation that we have just analyzed has gone down in history as Barkmann's Corner, in which it was confirmed that the German ace shot down some 9 Shermans and several other American vehicles, slowing down the American armored column for a few hours. Well, what do you think of this action by Barkmann? Would you put it on the same level as that of Whitman in Villers-Bocage or that of Otto Carius in Malinava? Would you like to see another program in which we analyze the combat of the Panzer divisions in Normandy at a general level? I leave you in the description the program that we have talking about it with David Diaz. Thank you all so much for being part of this community, especially the sponsors who make this possible. Subscribe and share this program if you liked it, and see you as always every Thursday and Sunday. See you soon.